So what are MIDs? MIDs are essentially two or more SSIDs with very similar or identical demographics, indicating that the student may have multiple SSIDs. So let's say if, as we saw earlier, we had Chantel and Chanel. Those could be two similar names, right? If a student has similar first name and last name but different middle names, have same birthdays, then those may trigger a mid as well. So mid sometimes happen because you resubmitted or requested um, an SSID multiple times for a student. Sometimes the system just overly detects different students and it turns out to be two different students detected by the system. So you can either ignore that, and for some you will need to combine SSIDs. So mids are detected on enrollments up to 14 months prior to census day. Okay, so going back to this section here, so we go to CalPAD's homepage, go to online maintenance, anomalies management, and go to mids. Mids essentially are detected 14 months, and so you should be able to, oh, it doesn't have a period here. My bad. Never mind. So it's 14 months prior to census day, or similar names and birthdays are detected and offered to you for managing. Okay. So here's an example. So you have here two different SSIDs. One is Ann Smith, one is Annie Smith, but they have the same gender, same birth date, was born in California, born in the same country. It may or may not be the same student. If they're not the same student, then you ignore. If they're the same student, then you combine two SSIDs. Okay. So what are common causes of MIDS? Number one, a student obviously has been assigned two or more SSIDs, or two similar but different students have been detected. Okay. So in this example, we have Bryce Canyon. Okay. And in this section, it's essentially a student with two or more SSIDs because I obviously generated two SSIDs for the student. So the student was this 610, and then same birth city, same everything except enrollment date and the local ID. So that's an example of a mid. And a mid can be resolved by combining the SSIDs using the mid tool, mid resolution tool that we have, or marking the SSIDs as different. Okay, so let's go to the demo because it's pretty straightforward. So right here we have two SSIDs triggering mids. In prior years, mids could be blamed to user error, right? You submitted new files or new SSIDs, and you essentially had the file with no SSID, and so, or you generated a new SSID for an existing student. But more often than not, mids since last year may be generated because of not following best practices in terms of requesting SSIDs. And so it's not against you guys, but just making sure that you know the process of requesting SSIDs. Okay. So this is the point where I emphasize the SSID matching tool. Okay. So let's go to CalPAD's user manual and go to the SSID matching tool. So the SSID match tool, as you know by now, is essentially another layer of detection that you could take advantage of to be able to see if a student, especially those students who may be in fourth grade, fifth grade, who transferred to your district, may have already an existing SSID in CalPAS. They might not have it in their cumulative file, but by doing an SSID match tool, the system will be able to offer you potential matches, and that would avoid you having generating mids for 10, 20 students in your district, or God forbid, 100 students. Okay. So if you're a big district. So this is a, I don't want to focus on this too much, but this is essentially a process that you guys should use to be able to avoid mids. Okay. And Nate essentially recorded a comprehensive video on how to do the SSID match tool if you haven't done it yet. Okay, so that's a way to avoid mids. However, we're already here. You have mids. How do we resolve it, right? So for mids, you go to the mid resolution window, and then you have these two students here, right? So I have here Deary McQueen, and I have Bryce Canyon. All right, so based on the tutorial on the CalPAS user manual on how to combine mids, I go here, I click on open, I assess this enrollment, and I say, oh, okay, actually I generated this, so this is mine, so I may need to exit this. I may need to combine this, right? So what do I do? It says here the possible duplicate 610, and then you will need to combine them. CalPads, when you combine a mid, CalPads will always retain the SSID that has the earliest enrollment date. So this would be the SSID that would be retained. Okay. So let's click on combine, and it says here mid combination will result in concurrent enrollments. Okay. I can't even click on the combine process. Why? Because it turns out there is a CCE within the LEA and I can't combine them. What does this mean? So what it means is that the enrollment for SSID 3917 and 6107 have open enrollment. So let's copy this, open up CalPads here, student data. I process this, the other one as well. Open a new tab. I have this. Okay. So when doing anomalies management, or just figuring out, so it is useful if you have multiple screens. So, but if you only have one screen, you can always just move this here and move the other one here. Okay. So let us check this. So currently, the reason why I can't combine them is because both have open enrollments. Okay. Both have open enrollments here. CalPAS will not allow you to combine an SSID if you have an open enrollment or if there is an overlap that might occur between you and one of these LEAs when you combine them. So even if there is a closed enrollment, if your start date overlaps the other LEA, then you will need to coordinate with that LEA and resolve the enrollments, right? So fortunately, both these records are our record, right? So in prior years, what I would tell you is that, okay, you guys have to figure out what SSID you want to retain, right? If you've already tested or invested or submitted records to one SSID, then by all means, maintain that SSID, right? You just fix the enrollment and then let CalPad stack up all of those supporting records. So that's what CalPad does. When you combine two SSIDs and those SSIDs do not have overlapping enrollments, CalPad will proceed with retaining the SSID that has the earliest enrollment, and then it stacks up all of the data. It stacks up the enrollment, it stacks up the demographic records, the SILA program, all of those into the retained SSID. So what are the consequences when CalPADS does that? When you combine an SSID and it stacks up all of the supporting records, what are the consequences? There's a good part and there's a bad part as well. Okay, good part is you have overlapping records, which is fine. However, the problem with that is you have overlapping student programs, and if you have two similar SILA statuses. So once CalPADS combines this, imagine having two TBD records, or imagine having a TBD record ahead of an EL that the student already had on the other S record. So the important thing before combining mids is for you to check all of the supporting records. Because in prior years, we just tell you, check the enrollment, right? But nowadays, it's better to clean up all supporting records first before combining SSIDs. Okay. So if we decide that the student was indeed this one here, because the student had started on 817 instead of 919, what do? We first delete all of these records under this student, and then we adjust the enrollments, and then we combine the mids. You can just make sure that the records align. You have to make sure that all of the supporting records are deleted first. So it appears that we are heavily invested on this SSID 6107623773. This was an incorrect record. And so we proceed with the maintenance, right? We first look at all information here. If you have an incorrect demographic info, by all means delete that. Address, by all means delete that. If you have duplicate SIGA records, by all means delete that. Okay, so let me just delete this first, because the consequence is if the TBD is later than, let's say you have a TBD here and then it turns out the student was EL, and you have a TBD on 919, the student was EL on 825 or before 919, you now have a TBD and EL and another TBD over here, right? So you could potentially delete that, but if you have, let's say, other statuses that needs to be deleted, then it would be difficult. Consequently, if this involves having to request to be able to delete those records, please send those requests first before combining the mids. So let's just delete this. Okay, I deleted that. Okay, and then now we proceed to the enrollment. Okay, the address and demographics, I can just leave it as is. So now we have this information here. Okay, since this is the earliest enrollment, this has a later enrollment, what we will do is to first temporarily close this enrollment. That way, when CalPADS combines the SSIDs, it doesn't overlap with this. So what I would do is go to this enrollment. Okay, I click on open. I exit this as in temporary N470 or whatever exit you guys want. I can just go back to 817. I exit this as no show for now. And then I post. Okay, so once that's exited, I don't have to touch the enrollment here because this is the later enrollment. So I just have to make sure that this enrollment is temporarily closed. Okay, so now we have 817 and you have 919. So now we should be able to combine the SSIDs without having to trigger a concurrent enrollment. So let's go back to the CCE section here. Let's refresh this page. Let's see if CalPADS then would allow us to combine this. So now if you click on open, now you don't have that message at the top, right? So now we could combine this because why? We already exited the student on 817 and it doesn't overlap this enrollment. So I combine them and I click on post. This will automatically combine the SSIDs. So let's say, assuming this mid was not detected by the system, what other functionality would allow us to combine these SSIDs? You go to here. So let's say you have a mid, but it's not showing here. How do you combine them after making sure that there are no overlapping enrollments? You go here to resolve mid not on report. You could do it here because CalPADS would allow it if the mid is here. But if the mid is not detected and it's essentially some student that has to be combined, you have to go to resolve mid not on report. So click on this. And for SSID1, you have to enter the SSID that is the focus ID, the SSID that will be retained by the system. Then you copy the other SSID that will be retired as SSID2. You validate it, and CalPADS will say that, okay, there is a possible duplicate, and now 3917, right? So now if you post this, this will then tell us that CalPADS will retain 617, okay? So that's that. That's a way to combine SSIDs that are not listed on the mid report, okay? So let's go back here though, because I want it here. I combine them and I post, and it says mid resolution saved. Interesting. It didn't tell us what it's saved to. Okay, so now that the mid is resolved, we will just assume that CalPAS already combined the SSIDs, and it combined, and we can just check on the SSIDs again, right? So let's go back and check our SSID. So let's copy this. So this is the SSID that was retired, right? So now it says here that SSID was retired to SSID 6107. So now we click on this, and CalPADS will show us the student detail here. So you now have this enrollment. We avoided having duplicate TBDs. Demographics and address are fine, that they can coexist as long as the information was correct. And then this one here, you only have one TBD. And by deleting programs for the student on the other section, you avoid having duplicate 181s, 182s with the same start date or overlapping dates. Okay. All right. So now what do we do with this? Do we just retain this TK here? By all means, no, because there are consequences on TKs versus just having KNs, right? If the student is essentially KN, then you just have to retain one record. We delete this. And once this is deleted, we reopen the correct enrollment date, which is 8/17. Okay, let's just wait for CalPADS to bring it up. So now we only have one enrollment record. You just open this up, clear this date, leave the exit blank. So now you have sole ownership. You have only one SSID for Bryce Canyon. This deserves a drum roll, Marshall. And so now you have just one open enrollment. There you go. Now you have an accurate SSID with an accurate enrollment history, just one SIGA. And so if the student has not been tested yet, then TOMS will then pick this up and will include it on the roster. Now, if this had an EL after this, then you would have had a TBD and an EL here, and we've avoided the disaster of having a TBD or EO above the EL. Okay. All right, so that's how to combine a mid. So now that's how mids are resolved. Once you do some cleaning before combining, and then after combining, you still do some housekeeping, right? Now that you've combined this, the next step is for you to download the replacement SSIDs. So if you have multiple SSIDs with mids that you need to resolve, say 100 of them, then this is a nifty way to be able to just collect those SSIDs that were retained, and then you import this to your SIS, and the SIS will then update the SSIDs for your students. Okay, so again, the last step is downloading the replacement SSIDs. All right, that's essentially your mid. So your CCE and your mid account for your anomaly percentage. Okay, so if you resolve your mids and CCEs, then it should have brought down your anomalies to below 2%, I mean. And that would allow you to be able to certify your Fall 1 certification. Okay. See, now it's just 556. I still have to resolve two CCEs, I guess. So yeah, so that's 556. At least it went down. So I have to resolve two CCEs to bring it further down, right? So that's how to resolve mids and CCEs and essentially allow you to certify. Now we still have one anomaly, and this is essentially your ERDs. It may not prevent you from certifying, but it may also cause an impact with regards to your dropout rates, right? Or to your loss transfer dropouts, or the student should come up as a dropout under report 1.8 and 1.14.